The same opportunity that the vast majority of the world would disregard or misinterpret. That most would feel fear of and be dissuaded by. Most would live in the stories about who they aren't and what they aren't capable of. But not you. You didn't place that mountain before you, but you sure can extract the value. You didn't place that mountain before you. All you have to do is decide that you're extract the value. You didn't place that mountain, the meaning, and all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, the value more than the discomfort and the meaning, and all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow that more than the discomfort and the meaning, all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow, allow the path simple value that is that and the meaning, but all you have to do is freedom of tomorrow. Why is our first instinct to think our next action needs to be as big or as glamorous as that intended result? Our next action needs to be as big or as again and again my default has been to, look for some brilliant, monumental insight or some secret answer that would unroll like a scroll containing a treasure map. But again and again I learn and I relearn that what I need, what is required, is so reasonable. It's so accessible that it almost feels like the universe has a sense of humor, right? It's sitting back and chuckling while we run around with keys in our pockets looking for a sledgehammer to break the door down. Back and chuckling while we run around with funny keys in our pockets looking for I had my first Your World Within live event, and Evan Carmichael was one of the speakers, and after the event we were talking about YouTube. He says, why don't you swing by, we'll look at your channel, see if I can offer any suggestions or pointers. And, I gladly accepted the offer. And so I showed up later in the evening. He's got his laptop open. He's running all these tests, right? There's graphs and there's charts and comparison tables. And my first question is obviously, what are you doing? And he says, I'm testing my YouTube titles and thumbnails. And I'm thinking, interesting. Right, here's a guy who makes so much content. He's got 378 million views, right? Why are you exhausting time and energy on this? So I asked him, Evan, does it really matter? I mean, if your thumbnail picture's orange or yellow, or if there's a face on the left or right side, or if it's capitalized or not, right? If it's good, people will show up and they'll watch it. Isn't that what matters? Well, it turns out I was wrong. In fact, I couldn't be more wrong. And when you're talking about a channel with millions of impressions, making a small change in color could mean your videos are clicked 1% more, which means thousands, if not millions, more views, which means it's shared more, seen more, which means the channel grows. And that's not from him going back and recreating and reinventing the wheel. It's using the key he has in his pocket right now. And that's the reason I found this so incredible, because until that moment, I'd always approached the platform sledgehammer, right? Using our metaphor. I had this idea that, I truly found to be an epiphany and changed the way I think about things. So I'd get really excited. I'd make a video about it. I'd release it out to the world, and maybe it wouldn't do so well. People wouldn't watch that particular video. It would just kind of sit there. And my thought was always, all right, hey, it worked for me. Must not have hit for everyone else. That's life. On to the next one. Never did I think for a second that, hey, you don't need to recreate the wheel. You're looking for a bulldozer when you need a key. readjust the titling or make the thumbnail more appealing, right? And the idea is these little tweaks are sometimes all that's required. You know, we think we gotta reach out and find some answer or readjust every aspect of what we're doing, and it's like, no, it's a little thing, and it's right in front of you, and it's very manageable, and it's very realistic. You know, and believe me, especially for people that aren't content creators, and there's a lot of you listening to this right now, I get how trivial this is. But isn't that the point? And sure enough, within the next few months, I changed some thumbnail pictures around, and 2 videos that were just sitting there got hundreds of thousands of more views. And I, you know, as I tend to do, look at the bigger picture. Well, how many times in life are you trying to find this monumental answer? And it's like, no, tweak here, adjustment here, change the way you are measuring success. Then it changes your tactics. Think about productivity. And I've been in the same boat. I want to be more productive. So how? Well, maybe if I get better at scheduling, I'll get scheduling tools, maybe some time management apps. I know I'll do a daily checklist. That'll do it. That's what I need. But in reality, the commonality when I have productive days is they all consist of me waking up, not stressed, having time to think, reflect, plan, and moving on. And it flows into every other aspect of my day. Right? It doesn't require me to buy some $1,000 productivity course. Big result often requires small, manageable action. And again, the point here is that change can feel overwhelming because I think the default mechanism is to assume the next step needs to be as big as that desired result. It's like, oh, I want to climb that mountain, so I have to figure out a way to jump that high. No, that's not true. You have to take small steps many times. And where we should be looking for consistency or something within our grasp or looking for some small self-contained miracle. You know, everything feels bigger than it is. It's an interesting part about growing up. You realize everything's not as big and intimidating and shiny and sparkly as it appears to be. You know, we have the tools right now in real time. In fact, they're very ordinary, very unimpressive, and that's with goals just like people. You know, I grew up seeing pictures of my grandfather, who was an admiral in the Navy, talking to American presidents and heads of state. And I'd ask him, you know, how was that? What was that like? And he'd always say, look, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do, just like you do. Right? I think in a lot of ways, you know, we need to take the glamour and the mystique away from the things we want and the people we aspire to be like, right? Big goals are an accumulation of little steps. And quote-unquote successful people are ordinary human beings who had the courage to take those steps. Not for attention or likes or follows, but because they cared and they respected the process enough to stick it out. And so can I. And so can you. Right? You have everything you need. Whether you're talking about creating on YouTube or putting yourself in position to conquer the day, learning or emulating those you admire, nothing is otherworldly for you. Sure, you'll have your strengths and your weaknesses because we all do, but there's no magic you need to find or acquire. No bulldozer or sledgehammer needed to lessen the gap between real and ideal. Just the understanding that the key in your pocket, what you already have, will get you through the door. It's not a commitment to perfection, it's a commitment to remind yourself that every time you're stuck or overwhelmed or lost, that perhaps you're looking for miracles in the clouds when the solution is simple at your feet. It's not the mountain, it's one rock. It's not the forest, it's one tree. It's not the journey, it's one step. And as time goes by, you'll find yourself moving beyond that previous reality, beyond those looking for the home run or otherworldly answers, and beyond the narrative that you don't have what it takes because you do and you always did. You simply had to commit to walking that path. How can I be happy all the time? It's a question I get probably more than any other, right? And every time I read that question, I pause for a second and can't help but think that it's somewhat misguided. Happy all the time. How can I eliminate everything? And I guess the thinking is, it's folks that know the channel and watch my videos, right? So they hear the perspective and the positivity and the messages, and they want that to be a constant reality, and I get that. But the part that I think is overlooked is that those breakthroughs, right, those lessons learned, they come from stories that were carved out from hardship, right, from some of my most difficult times. It's not that happy isn't the goal, it is, but at the macro level, it requires micro adjustments, right, periods of difficulty. We're human, we have emotions, we have highs, but you bet we have lows, and there's good, but there's also bad. And I don't believe that happy all the time is the target. The target's everything that comes your way, the good and the bad, making something out of it, a net positive, finding happiness in places where perhaps we didn't see it the first time, right? Thinking big picture, thinking macro, our overall contentment with life. See, that's the beautiful component that we're prone to overlook. And so I thought for some clarity, what I do is start from, day one, when I started this journey, this entrepreneurial, process. And I'd go through some of my messaging, some of the videos that I've released along the way, and talk about why, how I got to that point, how I got to that lesson learned, and why maybe happy all the time is misleading. The first video I ever released, it's called Ode to Excellence. And essentially it's a promise to myself to never quit, to never give up, to never back down, no matter how difficult things get. And I wrote that after my first true entrepreneurial project. I was on my own for the first time and love music, right? Music's always been sort of the backbone of my creativity. And I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put everything aside. I saved up some money. I'm gonna record an album, an acoustic album. And that's what I did. And I blocked off the world, and for 3 months I wrote songs and recorded them, and edited them, and mixed them, and mastered them. Put them all on CDs, and sent the CDs to radio stations, clubs, bars all around Boston. I thought it was gonna, be this life-changing thing, and it was, but not in the way that I thought. The CD got no traction, right? Family, friends bought it, were very supportive, but, that's really where it ends. And it was the first time in my life, truly, I'd given everything for something and gotten no response. It was the first time I realized that effort does not always equal a result. But here's why it was the best thing that ever happened to me. One, I realized that maybe it's not that good, which, looking back now, is what you'd expect doing something for the first time. It's like, dude, you have to hone your craft. You have to write 2,000 songs. You have to put in so much more time to be at a level where you want to be. You can't just think that it happens overnight, right? And that was a very important thing for me to understand. The second is, I realized that I was at the bottom of a very big mountain looking up. This is a process. And it's gonna take persistence, it's gonna take patience. And it was stressful, right? And particularly because I didn't have that safety net that I once had. I wanted to retreat back to the simplicity of what I had, the sort of the reassurance of a job. I wasn't sure that the cost, the uncertainty of the moment was worth it. It was stressful. But that situation helped define me, right? It wasn't perpetual happiness that taught me this lesson. It was my deepest times. From that failure came my resilience, came my ode to excellence. I wrote a speech called Perspective, and this is months down the road. I saw my first kind of glimmer of light. Right? I've been doing the music thing and also creating a brand on YouTube and sharing my thoughts, telling stories, and I finally saw a little bit of success. I wrote a speech called Running in the Rain, and it was getting traction, it was doing well, it was being shared, creating buzz, I was getting speaking inquiries, all these things, and I'm like, all right, well, here we go, right? Let's go, a little bit of momentum. And I woke up one morning, I got this email from YouTube, and it was like, we had to remove the video from their channel because you broke community guidelines. And apparently I put some keywords on the bottom of the description to help it get traffic. Running, inspiration, things that would help it sort of move to the top of the pile in the search bar. And I remember being so angry. I felt so sorry for myself. It was like momentum, attention, they're so hard to capture. I'm finally getting it, and now this, right? And my views are declining and everything's going backwards. You just feel like it was delusional. I felt like the world was ending. But that prompted me to look at the big picture, right? To realize that, look, there's nothing you can do except re-upload the video, start over, and keep my head up. Think about it. Life is going to throw things at me that are much more difficult than this, right? There's going to be difficulty and loss and problem, even tragedy. And if I fold over a video being taken down, I don't really have a shot, right? So from that tough time, I started to understand that it's not what happens to you, because everyone has difficulty in their life. It's how you deal with it. That's what I wrote a speech called Dancing with No Music. I remember the situation exactly. I was sitting at my desk, kind of brainstorming a new project I was going to work on, and my phone buzzed. Pick it up, and I had a text message from a friend at the time, and he accidentally sent a text message to me, kind of poking fun at me and my work and what I was doing. It was meant to be about me to someone else, and he accidentally sent it to me directly. And I remember sitting there thinking, dude, are you kidding me? Like, these are the people that are supposed to have your back. They're supposed to be picking you up, encouraging you when you're going through these difficult times. And so in that moment, I felt more alone than I had in a while. It wasn't a great feeling, but it prompted thought. Thought prompts perspective, and I began to realize, look, it's not his fault. People don't see the world as it can be. Right? They don't understand your vision. They see now, not your idea, not your potential. They see now. And if you want to bring that to fruition, you have to separate the people that do that and think like that and say those things and live life like it's already there, like it's guaranteed. And so from that difficult moment, I learned that I need to dance with no music, believe in myself, see it before it's there, act like I already hear the melody and I'm moving towards it. That's the only way to push through that cloud of chaos into the result that you want, that you so desperately want. I wrote a speech called The Last Train. At this point, I'd been working hard to build Your World Within for maybe a year at this point. One of my greatest struggles was that I continued to feel the pressure to adhere to standards that I didn't personally believe in. Right? I was restricted by benchmarks that they weren't integral to my journey. And so, before working for myself, it was trying to impress my boss, getting promotions and bullshit. Then it became comparing my style to those around me, to people that have found success in some capacity. And I even remember running at 2 p.m. and feeling guilty because all those people doing quote-unquote the right thing, they're working in an office. Like they don't have the luxury of running downtown. And that was my mindset. And so I fell into the temptation of viewing precedent, previous success stories as not just a tool, but as the singular way to reach the summit. And so I was continually zigging and zagging. Here's the shortcut, or here's the method, here's the strategy. I need to incorporate this and this and this. And every time I diverted from what felt true to me, I stumbled. Every time I left my path for someone else's, I became lost in this cloud of confusion. And it took, that reoccurring experience for me to finally understand
You know, it was from those times of disarray that I began to see the significance of patience. That it's okay. It's okay to take my own train. Even if it's the last one to leave the station. Don't panic. Don't do something you don't feel is true or right. Believe that your train is there. It's waiting. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's not a happy experience. But it evolves into this freedom, right? This flexibility and ultimately this satisfaction with life that wouldn't be there if you didn't see that more patient to find it. I wrote a speech called Remember Why You Started. Hands down, one of the toughest transitions of my life. I was in a situation that, on the surface, wasn't bad. In fact, you could say it's good. I was surrounded by beautiful relationships in a good place that I liked. But I was coming to the realization more and more that the situation wasn't conducive to me creating what I felt like I wanted to create. I'd sort of lost track. I'd lost that fire, that energy that I had when I first began. And that's due to concessions, so small compromises that I was making along the way that add up, and you sort of slowly lose yourself a little bit at a time. And when you make that realization, it's like, well, you have a decision to make. You know, are you okay 30, 40 years from now with sacrificing the thing you wanted to build because something else was more important, or other things took priority? And I don't think either one is right or wrong. It's the question that you have to answer. And I made that decision. And I packed up, put my stuff in a trailer, and I left. And I remember as my world faded away in my rear view, thinking like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I didn't believe for the first 200 miles I was actually going to go through with it. I really didn't. And eventually, you know, I arrived at a new place and I made it my home and dedicated myself fully again to what I believed in, to what I felt right, truly in my heart in doing. And I felt that energy, that fire sort of re-emerge. And you know, right? You know, you wake up and it just feels good. You have this passion that's there, that you want every day, that you want to maintain, that you want to drive you. And I knew it was the right decision. But that wasn't born out of happiness. That wasn't born out of the easy thing. It was very, very difficult to get there. It was almost a battle, right? You have to fight to reprioritize. And so this comes up a lot when I hear that question. How can I be happy all the time? And it's like, well, you know, you can do the easy thing. It's easier in the short term, but then will you be happy in the long term? You know, it's sort of a catch-22. It's a prioritization. It's understanding what makes you feel alive, what makes you feel truly good, authentic. And that's not a question of short-term, consistent, non-stop happiness. It's a question of long-term fulfillment. Sometimes we have to do the difficult things to create what we want long-term, big picture. And lastly, I'll talk about Ode to Excellence Part 3, which obviously has been years since Part 1. And a lot's changed. The goalposts have shifted, the context is new. But the idea is pretty simple. It's a promise to myself to move into uncharted water, whether that's because it feels right, I'm called to do it, or sometimes just for the sake of sheer curiosity. It's that idea that sometimes what awaits around the corner can change your life. Like that unknown can be exactly what you need, and you don't know unless you move there. And the difference in context is that now I'm settled. Right now I'm substantially more comfortable than I was when this whole thing began for me. And the danger in that is nothing's screaming at you constantly to continue to grow and evolve and develop. Right? It's real easy to fall into routine and just kind of keep going the way you've always gone. And I remember sitting right outside talking to a good friend of mine on the phone, and we were talking strategy, talking about growing our brands, and just kind of the different worlds that we're involved in. And he asked, Eddie, why, have you stopped doing the music thing? I think there's something there. And, music's obviously been a big part of what I do. it kicked off my creative journey, as I mentioned earlier with that album. It's been sort of, intertwined into this process. I write a lot of background tunes. I wrote the background music you're listening to right now. I haven't completely left it, but I've pivoted. And when he asked why it's been sort of in the background, I couldn't give a complete answer. I didn't really know. But as I began to think about it, the answer really rose to the surface. And I became so fixated on one dimension of what I was doing that I started to look at it through a lens of scarcity and ignoring the infinite possibility out there. I mean, really, in relation to what's possible, my accomplishments are a grain of sand on the beach. Right? It's very minimal. But that's not how you look at things when you really get lost in the weeds. I didn't want to hurt my credibility. I didn't want to lose what I've built. I didn't want to sabotage a quote-unquote winning formula. But guess what? That's not what life's about. That's not what my brand or message is about. That's not what got me here, right? Exploring creativity is what got me here. It means everything. And that was such an eye-opening thing. It was such a beautiful reminder that, Ed, you're limiting yourself. You're not evolving. There's a treasure chest around the corner and you're too worried about losing your shiny penny. It was from this predicament, right, being honest, that courage and that determination grew. In fact, the struggle ended up exponentially increasing my overall happiness because it re-emphasized the creative flexibility necessary to do what I think's right. The third ode to excellence is a promise to keep that flame lit. And see, these are just a handful of little stories, right? They're little epiphanies. But I can say wholeheartedly that they shaped me. Not because every day of the journey I was constantly smiling, but it was the specific times that I wasn't that made me stronger. I'm happier now, my life is better now because of these situations. And that's what I want to emphasize, right? Happy all the time isn't the goal. It can't be the goal. Living a life you're proud of and turning the bumps along the way, the inevitable roadblocks along the way into momentum, that's going to give you long-term happiness. That's going to make you feel better about every moment. It's such a gift to be here. We're so lucky. Let's move away from the idea that there are people out there that never have a bad day. Nothing's ever wrong in their life, because that's not only untrue, but it dilutes the opportunity in front of you. It makes you feel like you're losing when bad things happen, when in fact those are the tools to win, to live every day to the fullest. Right, the reality is, sometimes it is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, sun on your face, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life. It is the Hallmark card thing, right? Hands out, those little reality, smiling, humming your favorite song, life.
offended by this. Someone used language that they didn't like. Someone doesn't share the same customs that you. And all day long, in fact, if you keep track tomorrow, you will find probably 100 reasons that you can go around being offended. But a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing is a mind that says, I'm never looking for anything to be offended by. And that whatever anybody else out there has to say, my response to that is, that's an interesting point of view. I've never considered that before.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because in my first business, I struggled to stay afloat. I quit my business partner, and the thing that kept me going was studying the stories of famous entrepreneurs and seeing how they struggled and seeing what they had to overcome and listening to their wisdom and motivation gave me the courage, the strength, the belief to go one more day and see my business through. And in all honesty, I still need the inspiration, wisdom, motivation today for my business too. So today, let's live your best believed life and get some incredible motivation from the one and only Wayne Dyer. Enjoy.
I remember being interviewed for a morning television show, and the woman that was interviewing me said, "How does it feel to be talking and to the audiences that was interviewing me said, how does it feel to be talking these weird things that they come? Audiences that was interviewing me said, how does it feel to be one of the weird things that audiences that was interviewing me said, how does it feel to be one of the weird things that audiences that was interviewing me said, how does it feel to be one of the weird things that audiences that were interviewing me said, how does it feel to be one of the weird things that audiences that